Welcome to the Victory Club, the show for the everyday athlete who's not chasing medals, but chasing a better life. I'm Rebecca Trulette, a sports and pelvic floor physical therapist, mom, and weekend warrior with a passion for helping you move better, feel stronger, and stay in the game, whatever your game looks like. Each episode, we dive into real-world, no-fluff advice and personal stories on training smart, staying injury-free, and building habits that actually last. Whether you're hitting the gym, the trails, or just trying to keep up with life, this is your space to learn, grow, and win your own kind of victory. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Victory Club podcast. Another episode. We've done a couple of these already. My first question for you before we get into our very interesting topic is, how are you feeling about this whole thing?
I'm feeling good. I'm just really loving being able to take this information and put it together and send it out there to the people, put it out on the web.
Pretty positive feedback, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely I've had some feedback so far. Being able to provide just information, kind of these small snippets like this, is something that I think people are looking for.
I think they're going to be very interested in what you have in store for us today with this topic of, if I'm reading this correctly, is...
Well, hold on. Before we dive into that, I actually want to start with a question for you. As part of our whole podcast is really just making people feel good, move better. That's the whole concept of victory. I want to ask you about your day today. So tell me, because most of what we talked about so far today since you've been home is how many times Delilah has screamed at me since I picked her up from daycare, and we haven't talked about anything adult related. Tell me about your day. I want to hear one good thing that happened to you today.
I don't know. I think a good day was getting, through the day. This was a pretty big deadline as far as my line of work, which is an income tax deadline, as far as just getting through the stresses of what that is, of filing these returns, getting them to hopefully become correct on our first filing without having to fix them. So
was that today?
It was today. It was a pretty trying day, but we got some things done, got some things filed, and we moved on. So probably a big victory for me was just making it from 8 to 5 and seeing the light at 5 o'clock.
The end of the tunnel there. I like that. I had a win for today. So do you remember yesterday I got stung by that wasp outside?
Yeah, which I politely took care of after you were not going to go back over to the same spot in which you got stung.
Anyhow, I learned today that I don't think it was actually a yellow jacket that stung me, because yellow jackets do leave their stingers. But there are other types of wasps that don't. I had a patient today educate me on wasps, which was very lovely. But I also learned that there is a certain type of toothpaste, I believe, that you can put on the wasp bite area to help get the poison out, because it has actually been pretty swollen today and has been itching like crazy. So I might be lathering up toothpaste on this leg when we get finished with this.
Well, whatever you got to do, because we're not smokers, and my initial thought was just rub some tobacco on it.
Yeah, that was the second suggestion from my patient. I was like, yeah, don't have that. Toothpaste it is.
All right, well, look, let's jump right on into this. And the title of what you have, if I'm reading this correctly, is, Am I Pregnant, or Was That Just CrossFit? Now, from a male's perspective, I only can be one of the two. So this is going to be kind of interesting as you take us through whatever this is that I'm getting myself into.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to play a little game today. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a condition that I have seen in the realm of physical therapy. I'm going to kind of describe it a little bit, and then I want you to tell me if you think this particular condition was something that was caused by or as a result of something related to CrossFit, or if it's actually something that is experienced during pregnancy. Okay?
Got it.
All right. So the condition that we're going to go over today is called Meralgia Paresthetica.
not going to try to pronounce it, which let me actually back up real quick. I'm going to tell a quick little caveat story back to our college days.
Here we go.
With type A Becca, freshly, we've been dating for a little while, but she would put together these long, drawn out study guides, very big words. I'm an accounting brain, don't know any of them. She would ask me to study with her. So I'd have to read the questions, and I found it funny to mispronounce things purposefully. Actually, really, I'm not even going to try to say what you said, but we would go through these long study guides where my eyes would glaze over, and at the end of it, she'd say, did we cover it all? We did. I no clue if we did. I don't know if Becca knew if we did or not.
I have no idea if I was even like giving the right answer. So like, I guess thank goodness I was a good student because like you weren't going to be able to tell me if I was wrong.
She got close enough for me. But anyway, back to your question. My guess for this one.
Wait, hold on. I don't want you to guess just yet, right? I have to tell you a little bit more about what it is, right? Like I just gave you the name. That would be setting you up for like total failure. Let me at least dive into and give you
use it in a sentence to start off.
I don't even know if I can use that in a sentence. Let me just get into it. Let me just tell you some of the symptoms that a patient would experience. Okay. So essentially Meralgia Paresthetica is, so let's do this. I'm gonna picture this here for you. So in your leg, in fact, oddly enough, this particular location that is affected by this condition is pretty much exactly where this wasp stung me yesterday. So right here on the leg. Okay.
So the wasp knew what it was doing.
The wasp, yeah, it could have been setting me up for this, right? So, but essentially what it is, it's a numbness or tingling, and then sometimes a burning that comes down the front to outer part of your thigh. And it will have pain or irritation. Basically, those symptoms will be elevated with walking, periods of prolonged standing, things like going up and down the stairs, and then periods of prolonged sitting. That area also will have a sensitivity to touch or pressure, or this feeling like, you know, when your foot falls asleep and it feels like kind of painful, kind of numb at the same time, that sensation. That's what it feels like down the leg, essentially.
So what is actually happening during this?
Okay, yeah, great question, right? So that's the symptoms that you feel, but that's not the actual like medical thing, right? So the medical thing is basically a compression of one of the nerves that transmit and basically provide feedback of sensation on the outside of your lateral thigh. So lateral basically just means outside, and the thigh, obviously, we're talking about the upper part of your leg here, okay? And so what's happening is that nerve, it is the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve, or LFCN for short abbreviation. It is getting compressed somewhere from where, in between where it leaves the spinal cord, which is part of your lumbar spine. So that's going to be part of your lower back. From basically its origin point there all the way out to that lateral part of your thigh. So that coarse region. So here, all the way around to here. One of those locations, the nerve is getting impinged or pinched. And that fashion is causing compression of the nerve and basically creating this like pseudo paralysis, rendering that nerve not firing on all cylinders, essentially. Okay. The most common location that we have compression is going to be at the inguinal ligament, which is going to be right on that front part of the hip. So basically like your hip crease. When you sit down, that part right in there where your leg and your body meet up together, that part is right where this nerve is generally going to get compressed.
So if I had to guess, my guess would be, and I feel like you're trying to throw me for a loop here with bringing it back to everything, but my guess would be CrossFit.
Okay.
Do I have a reasoning? No. Do I want a reasoning? Probably not. Could I describe to you a reason? There's not a chance.
Well, yeah. I guess it would also be a little more helpful if you had potentially a little more experience with CrossFit. I know that's not your cup of tea per se.
I don't have any experience being pregnant either, so this may not be the best.
That is true. Maybe I should have picked a different guest for this podcast episode. Are there any pregnant CrossFitters out there that want to join me and co-host this episode? If you are out there, holler.
That's my guess. CrossFit is my guess.
Okay. Well, I will tell you, and I hate to say this, that you are right, but
we're going to have to keep stats on this. I'm 1-0.
I will also tell you that you are wrong, and I did set you up for failure because it is actually yes, a condition affected by CrossFit, but B, yes, also a condition affected by pregnancy.
All I heard was, yes, you're correct.
All right, so let me tell you, I'm going to talk you through a couple of stories here and kind of explain the difference, right? Because we think about CrossFit and we think about just literally the act of being pregnant and how those two things can be vastly different and how we can have this one medical condition, if you will, that can happen to both populations. So I have had experience with 2 prior patients with this particular condition recently, and one of them being a male CrossFitter. And he came to me one day at the gym and was like, hey, I just want to talk to you about something. It's kind of a little weird and I don't really know what's going on. Like this part of my leg is just like kind of numb and kind of traced through that exact pattern that we were talking about. So that hand kind of coming down the lateral thigh and across like kind of the front of the thigh a little bit. And they're like, I didn't do anything, weird. I didn't like hurt myself. Like, I just kind of woke up and it was here. And then we kind of obviously got into talking into a little more detail about everything and found out that the day prior, the particular workout of the day was a very heavy C2 bike workout, which is something you're familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So think about the position that you are in when you're riding the bike. Like you'll get on the bike and you'll ride for an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that position, like your knees are coming up, correct? So that angle, that hip crease gets smaller. So in that particular location we talked about is where the compression can occur, which irritates that nerve. So just imagine if your seat height was actually like a little too low on the bike you were on and you were going like heavy, like hard, like maybe like the damper was up on like 9, 10 and you were really pumping hard, big effort, and your seat was a little too low. So you were getting a ton of like hip flexion in that like pinch position. That would just irritate the heck out of that nerve. And so there's a potential that like kind of waking up the next day, you could have some of those symptoms, right? So that's our patient A, right? Now let's go patient B. So patient B, I already told you, spoiled it a little bit. It was a pregnant individual, so a female. And this individual, not a CrossFitter. In fact, this individual actually wasn't even like really big into fitness. Came to me, was having some pregnancy symptoms. And the first thing that this particular person said was like, I'm having this numbness in my leg that's just gotten worse over the last couple of months as my belly's grown larger. And they're like, but this is weird because last time I was pregnant, this was this individual's second pregnancy. She was like, I had it down the back of my leg, like the sciatica, which is also very common in pregnancy, but that's another conversation for another day. And she was like, I don't think this is sciatica though, because it's in a different spot. And I was like, you're correct, not sciatica. But she was like, I just don't know why this front part of my leg is numb. So again, same thing. Prior experience is like, well, she didn't do a heavy C2 workout yesterday, so I know it's not that. What else about this particular patient's life puts her in a position of a lot of hip flexion? Well, she sits on a low stool, like the kind that like a doctor would roll around on. So she sits kind of low to the ground in this stool for hours at a time. And she works hands-on with patients as well. And so she leans a little bit forward in her chair. So bringing her hip into greater flexion, right? And so in that particular position there, she is in a position of compression, again, right at that hip crease, constantly compressing the nerve. And as her belly is growing, the belly causes her to have to sit outward a little bit with our legs and then lean forward. So the belly is actually causing some extra compression in that particular area there.
Interesting. And just to give a little visual, as she's describing all these symptoms and stories, she's quite the character of acting them out and, contorting herself to a way that she's actually, but it's very interesting. So once we get to now we've identified this particular set of pain or irritation, how do we treat it?
Right. So this is one of those conditions when we're talking about nerves, it's actually a really, I think, fascinating kind of treatment process because our nerves do not like to be compressed or pinched, like I just talked about, right? But they also don't particularly really like to be stretched. So let's kind of back up here for a second and let's talk about something most people know a lot about. Most people know a lot about muscles and tight muscles. If we have a tight muscle or an irritated muscle, we're probably going to do what?
Rest, I would imagine.
Okay. Yeah, that would be one piece of it. The next thing that we would do if a muscle is tight, what do I ask you to do like all the time?
Stretch.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So stretch. So naturally, if we have a nerve that's kind of pissed off or irritated and tightening down because it's been compressed, what do we want to do? We want to stretch that nerve as well. Muscles don't particularly like to be stretched. Like, you know how tight it is when trying to stretch your hamstrings? Like it doesn't feel great. Well, a nerve is like 10 times more sensitive than that. So trying to put this extra stretch on the nerves is really uncomfortable. So like first and foremost, what you want to do if you are experiencing these conditions, you want to seek out a physical therapist, right? A physical therapist going to do two very important things for you. The very first thing is they're going to evaluate you and they're going to make sure that the symptoms that you're experiencing are not signs of something that are more significant, like an issue at the spinal cord level, some other condition that maybe mimics symptoms that you're feeling right that, or something much more grave, right? They'll be able to they'll be able to assess and find red flags to help set you up to the right professional that will then diagnose you with those conditions. The second thing that the physical therapist will do once they get the red flags out the way is they'll set you up with the right parameters of exercises and stretches to help basically free up the nerves that are being compressed, give you some particular stretches that we call nerve glides to help mobilize that tissue a little bit. And also look and see like, hey, was this something that was caused from just one heavy episode of a workout? Or is this something that was caused from a repetitive posture activity like the particular patient that I mentioned in pregnancy, right? So what we want to do with that is really educate from there on changes in postural positioning, ways to avoid some of those really irritating positions. Like how can we modify your work setup that is more optimal for you, right? So you don't create this impingement over time.
So give me your one, it doesn't have to be the end all be all stretch, but what's a go-to stretch to stretch those muscles out?
I do like a hip flexor stretch. So that would be if you're laying on your stomach, so laying on your belly, and you're taking your foot and you're pulling it kind of up towards your butt. Oftentimes, most people are going to need to have a strap with that. I like a good hip flexor stretch in that particular position. Secondly, there's a stretch that's called a saphenous nerve glide. And the saphenous stretch is a position where we kind of rotate and extend the leg a little bit. I found some success with stretching in that position as well for individuals that are having these symptoms down the front of the thigh. But essentially, I would say probably the best one would be a hip flexor stretch, laying on your belly, starting in that position. Or honestly, if you're like that irritated, you could do some light foam rolling in that position, or like using like the muscle stick and kind of rolling out the quad there and kind of going at it in that direction.
Well, good. I think that's some pretty valuable information there as far as, some things to look out for. Could be in the office setting, could be in a high workout setting. It could be in someone's day-to-day life that they may experience this pain and maybe I'd be able to identify with it. Is there anything that you felt like you left out or want to leave the people with as far as,
No, I think the only thing I want to leave the people with is for you to repeat the name of this condition and close out this episode.
That's a negative. We're just going to remember that Jeremy is 1-0, and we're going to end this one on a high note.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today, learning a little bit more about Meralgia Paresthetica. Like Jeremy said, it is a condition that can affect people from a variety of different activities and lifestyles, but it's something that can be treated with the help of a physical therapist, so you don't have to continue to suffer in pain. All right, guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us today. If you want to learn more about working with Victory, whether it's through personalized physical therapy programs, group therapeutic exercise classes, performance training, or recovery and maintenance programs, follow us on Instagram at Rebecca Trulette PT and at Welcome to the Victory Club, or check us out online at www.movewithvictory.com.